You're listening to Revenge of the Drive-In, the podcast where we watch and discuss two movies randomly selected from a list of over 1,700. This week we are talking about The Invisible Man Returns, as well as the long-anticipated and frequently hinted at Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity. I'm your host Patrick, and I am joined here by
Jim. Hello, everybody.
All right, we've got a couple of science fiction thrillers, high energy, high intensity, high silicone, at least for one of them.
Yeah, you can say that again, for sure.
Anyways, Jim, you want to get us started on The Invisible Man Returns?
So, Invisible Man Returns, 1940 is when it came out. Very long time ago. Our first
movie from the 40s. We've done several from the 30s, several from the 50s. This has been our missing decade here because I don't have too many 40s movies. It's mostly like sequels to the classic Universal Monsters and stuff like that. So
yeah, and we're starting off with a pretty good one, I'd say, for the 40s anyways. Right at the beginning of the decade. Who was it directed by again? It was directed by, what was it, John?
I think Joe May is the guy's name.
I looked him up. There was nothing super incredible about his directing career. He was German, though. He came from Germany. I don't know if he fled Germany, but he did come to America from Germany in 1933.
Okay.
I would say that he was fleeing Germany. He was big in the German directing scene and directing schools, but when he got to America, he didn't do too many high-profile things. This was probably one of the biggest.
One of the co-writers, too, of this movie, one of the screenwriters is Kurt Siodmak, or Siodmak. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but I'm familiar with him because he did a lot of the Universal Monster movies of the 40s. I think he wrote The Wolfman. He's also from Germany originally. Again, don't really know the background that brought him to the United States. But he wrote the novel Donovan's Brain, which is like somewhat of a classic of like science fiction and horror. So he's, I don't know if this is one of his first American films, but it's one of them.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I guess there's not really too many notable people in this movie. As with all these movies, I'm really not very familiar with that kind of era of Hollywood
cast
actors.
Here.
Well, I was looking some of them up, and some of them were starring in many, many movies, or were big character actors that were in a lot of movies, but I hadn't really heard of any.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we've got a Sir in the cast, so that says something. Yes, we did. Yes, Sir Cedric Hardwicke. He's in a lot of the Universal Monster movies. He was like a renowned theater actor long before he ever started working on film. But he's a big name, and then obviously Vincent Price he becomes the first actor to be featured in 4 films on our podcast. So congratulations to him. Be sure to check that off of your Revenge of the Drive-In bingo card. Yeah. I had my money on Linnea Quigley myself.
I was gonna say, if you get a bingo, you get it like a year subscription for free, even though I'm pretty sure this is all free. So never mind. Well, yeah, Cedric. I wanted to call him Cedric Diggory. What's his name again?
Hardwicke.
That's it. Yeah, he was in all kinds of friggin' films. Holy moly! Like The Hunchback of Notre Dame or Notre Dame.
Which version? 39?
No, 40.
40. Okay.
Oh, yes, sorry. 39, yes.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's the Charles Laughton one. That one's pretty good.
He was in The Ghost of Frankenstein alongside our favorite Lon Chaney Jr. and Bela Lugosi. He was in Les Mis, the one from 35, of course. King Solomon's Mines, 37. The Keys of the Kingdom, 44. Hitchcock's Rope.
Is he?
Yeah,
I don't remember that.
He was in Richard III, 55.
Yeah, I remember that. He's I haven't seen that movie in a long time, but it's great. He's King Edward IV, so he's the okay. That makes sense.
And I mean, I recognized him from the Ten Commandments.
Well, Vincent Price also is in the Ten Commandments in about 90 seconds of that film. I think he plays like a slave driver or something.
I guess let's get into it. Other than some really cool smoky letters for a title screen, which was genuinely impressive, or it genuinely impressed me, we open on the Radcliffe Manor in the servants' quarters. They're discussing the soon-to-be-dead Sir Geoffrey Radcliffe, who's played by Vincent Price. He's to be hanged for murdering his brother Michael, but something fishy's going on. These servants don't really believe he did it. Upstairs, Helen Mason, who is Jeffrey Radcliffe's romantic interest.
Fiance, I think.
Is she? Okay.
They're always fiancés in these Universal Monster movies, aren't they? Like Frankenstein, the Invisible Man, I think is a fiancé. I mean, I think they're always fiancés. I feel like
trust it.
The Wolfman is the only one off the top of my head that I can think of that has like a ground-up romance where he meets the woman in the movie, you know?
So Helen is his fiancée. She's upset because Jeffrey's going to be put to death. And there's a fellow named Richard Cobb who is Sir Cedric Diggory, and I know it's Hardwick. And he's attempting to kind of console her and help her get over Jeffrey. And then Dr. Griffin walks in. He is the brother of Claude Rains, right? From the original Invisible Man. And he says he's going to go see Jeffrey in prison, which he's in Scotland, I think, right? And I love this shot. They cut to the prison. It's like Prison of Scotland or something, and it's just like this ugly-looking concrete building. I'm like, yes. Scotland.
It's my favorite one of those kinds of things, though, is in Silent Night, Deadly Night when they go to visit Grandpa and he's just being held at Utah Mental Facility or something like that.
Yeah, that's great. So Dr. Griffin visits Jeffrey. We don't see any of the visit, but when the guards come in to hang out with Jeffrey, he takes his clothes off and disappears.
Right.
And we hear about all of this when Detective Sampson, good old Dick Sampson, is put on the case from Scotland Yard, and he immediately knows that Dr. Griffin has something to do with this stunt. He is well aware of the original Invisible Man.
Right. I have a few things to say about this. First off, let's talk about Inspector Sampson. This is Cecil Kellaway, who's an actor who I'm familiar with from one Twilight Zone episode. He's in the episode Elegy, which came out in probably 59 or 60. It was an early Twilight Zone episode, so about 20 years after this. He looks like an old man in both things. You would think they were shot around the same time.
Okay, yeah.
He's great in both things I've seen him in. Maybe I've seen him in some other things too. I don't know. But, you know, in the Twilight Zone, he plays an alien, like, kindly caretaker of an alien cemetery. It's a really great episode. You'll have to see it. But he plays, like, kindly old gentleman who has this, like, darker edge to him that's revealed later. Here, I love him. He's just the like, this confident, bright detective guy, and he doesn't take any shit from anyone. He's kind of witty, kind of funny, too. Mm-hmm. He's really good. He's probably my favorite actor in this movie. And then also, I just want to say, I think this movie misses a bit of an opportunity in terms of, it seems like it takes a while to get going, even though it really doesn't. I think, because we essentially have, if you've ever seen the film The Fugitive, or I suppose the television show The Fugitive, but the Harrison Ford movie is the one I'm familiar with, we basically have the same plot as that in this movie. It's just with an invisible man, and there's nobody with just one arm. But I think it would have been so much cooler if we start with the escape from prison, and if we didn't have, like, I think the servants kind of talking about, like, oh, I don't really think he could have done it. I think that would be so much more engaging if we learn that information later, and so kind of right off the bat we're following this guy and we don't know if we should be rooting for him or not. I don't know. That's just my thoughts. I thought this first act was a little kind of dull and unengaging.
You know, and I agree with you, because as soon as you introduce that glimmer of hope for the main character, the seemingly evil, awful, murderous main character, you realize, oh, well, he obviously didn't do it. You know, like, you know exactly
I mean, they offshoot it a little bit later when he's getting pissed at the dog and everything, and you're supposed to kind of be like, okay, is that his normal nature coming through, or is that the disease, or, you know, not the disease, but the side effect of the invisibility cloak, to keep with the Harry Potter references here.
Oh, I love you, Patrick. You're my favorite.
I just don't think it's done as well as it could be, really.
I totally wholeheartedly agree with that. Well, let's step back to the detective for a second, because I agree with you. He's probably my favorite character, and I think probably the best actor in this.
Yeah, it's an enjoyable performance, just all around.
The second scene he's in, when he approaches Dr. Griffin in his lab to kind of question him on the invisibility drug and stuff, and Christ, what's his name now? Jeffrey. I love how he walks in, lights the cigar, and just starts kind of blowing smoke, and you immediately know what he's doing.
And it's funny too because he's all around these like scientific chemicals and stuff, and you probably shouldn't. You probably shouldn't light anything anywhere near this stuff.
No.
But no, I like it. He's clever. He knows what happened in the first movie, and he knows. I want to say that the first movie, I don't think they really do a whole. I know the Invisible Man smokes in one scene, but I don't think they ever really track him down by smoke. But they like catch him in the rain and in the snow, But here, this is just like kind of a new method. I think it's a new method. I don't remember.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's still a few cats in this movie. That at least carried over from the first one. Yeah,
but they don't kill any by pouring a bucket of black paint on it. That was one of the funnier moments in the original Invisible Man.
Poor cat. But you're right. Detective Sampson, he's very quick and clever. Sometime after Detective Sampson stops in to talk to Dr. Griffin, we cut to a little cottage somewhere. I think it's like the gamekeeper's cottage of whatever estate. And Helen is waiting for Jeffrey to show up. I gotta say, his Invisible Man costume, Vincent Price's Invisible Man costume, is way less exciting than that of Claude Rains.
Now, is that just the presentation? Because the first time we see the Claude Rains Invisible Man, he's got the jacket on, he's been wandering out in the cold winter air, and he's just mysterious. And here we kind of already know what's going on. I think it could just be that, but I sort of agree with you too.
Yeah, well, he's also wearing Vincent Price, is actually wearing motorcycle goggles or something, whereas Claude Rains has those really cool sunglasses.
More like the blind person glasses, those kinds of things. The things that
looks creepy.
That Ralphie wears in his Dream in a Christmas Story after he's been blinded by soap poisoning.
Yeah. And he's also, and like Claude Rains also had that creepy wig, or that, not a creepy wig, but that wig on that poked through his bandages, which made him look deranged.
There was just a little bit of hair there. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
So that's where I stand on VP's costume.
And I would just like to say, I mean, we don't get a lot of continuity with the Invisible Man character as far as the Universal Monster movies go. I mean, I suppose this is a different character than he was, but this is a weird series, the Invisible Man series, because the original, it's a sci-fi horror movie. It has obviously comedic elements. This one I wouldn't really call a horror movie. It's like a murder mystery thriller.
Yeah, with a fair amount of comedic elements.
Yeah, there's still some comedy. The Invisible Woman is like an all-out slapstick comedy. The Invisible Agent is a made during World War II spy thriller where they have the Invisible Man like trying to steal plans from the Nazis or something. And then they did the Invisible Man's Revenge, which was kind of like a return to horror. That was like, that's probably the only movie that I would say is truly a horror movie other than the original Invisible Man. Then there's, of course, Abbott and Costello Meet the Invisible Man. That's a classic one. That's probably the second best Invisible Man movie from the Universal series.
Shut up.
It's a great movie.
I'll take your word for it.
There's a scene with the Invisible Man helping, which one's the fat one? Is that Abbott? I think it's Abbott. But Abbott is like boxing someone, and he doesn't throw a punch, and the Invisible Man just beats the shit out of the guy. It's great. It's really fun.
It does sound great. Well, getting back to this Invisible Man movie, the scene where Jeffrey and Helen are in the cottage is where we kind of get an explanation of what's actually going on. Mm-hmm. Vincent Price explains that he's been made invisible by Dr. Griffin, or we kind of piece that together.
Well, because she knew about this. Like, when he shows up, she's not, surprised that he's in bandages. Like, she was in on this plan.
No, she was waiting for him. And the whole point of these three working together is they are attempting to exonerate Jeffrey, because he's being held in prison for murder, as we've already discussed. And he's trying to find out who the real killer is so he doesn't have to get hanged. Mm-hmm. Or hung? Hanged? It's hanged, right?
Hanged.
Yeah. So Jeffrey nods off to sleep. He's resting in the safe house. And while he's doing that, we see Dr. Griffin testing the invisibility drug, or the un-invisibility drug, on some invisible guinea pigs, which I really like.
Yeah, they're working on the antidote, I think is the word that they use.
The effects of the invisible guinea pigs, they're super simple, but they look really good. You know what I mean?
I think overall the effects in this movie on par with what we see in the original. I think there's some parts that are like really creative, particularly at the end. But I mean, it's a well-made film from a technical special effects standpoint.
Well, back at the cottage, this bumbling constable barges his way into the house, all because the gameskeeper's dog really hates Vincent Price and was barking at him the whole time.
Right.
The constable discovers Jeffrey upstairs with Helen. He runs downstairs, calls Detective Sampson, but by the time the detective gets there, Jeffrey's already stripped down and disappeared.
I'm gonna say too, because Jeffrey is rude to the police when they show up. He's in the right here. They don't have a warrant. They don't have any kind of probable cause to enter just because a dog is barking. I don't think. I mean, who knows? In 1940 Britain, who knows? You'd think they'd have better things to do, like duck and cover from all the bombing raids, but whatever.
When Jeffrey flees the cottage, he heads to Dr. Griffin's lab. He gets some blood taken so Griffin can try to get an antidote made.
Oh, I like that, how they have like trouble finding a vein. I think that's a nice little detail. I like. I mean, it's not important, but it lends a little bit of realism to the situation.
Well, and I like when he draws the blood, it's also invisible, and he has to add like coloring to it to see it. While Jeffrey is at Griffin's lab, a drunk Mr. Spears comes in to complain to the doctor. Oh, I guess I should explain who Mr. Spears is. He is like the new...
I think the film should explain a little better.
I know. It's a little confusing, but the long and short of it is he is like the new boss at the coal mining... He's like the new workers supervisor at the coal mining facility.
Oh, and you know who this actor is, right?
No.
It's Alan Napier. He plays Alfred in the original 1960s Batman show.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a very good movie for like character actors. There's a few like Cecil Kellaway, Alan Napier, Cedric Hardwicke, character actor. At this point, Vincent Price was a character actor. I mean, he became a star later on, but yeah, it's a good character actor movie.
It is, yeah. But this guy, Mr. Spears, this supervisor, he comes in pissed drunk to complain to the doctor that no one's working in this crumbling, cave-in prone mine. When he leaves, Jeffrey follows because he realizes, hey, this nobody who doesn't deserve the supervisory job got promoted pretty quickly. He must know something about the death of my brother. So we get this invisible hijinks scene, and it's not near... none of the invisible hijinks scenes or like invisible chase scenes in this movie are as good as that invisible hijinks scene from the original, I think, anyways.
I would agree, but this is my favorite scene in the movie, when he pulls over the car and just starts tormenting him and haunting him. Like that, it's fun. Yeah. It's not as fun as it was in The Invisible Man, and I think some of that is Vincent Price's vocal performance. Like the last time we talked about Vincent Price, we were talking about The Fly. And you were not a fan of his performance in that movie, but I defended him. I am not a fan of his performance in this movie. I think his, he's never... I mean, he's not the monster, the villain that Claude Rains was. But even when he's trying to torment people like this guy here, he's not that threatening. And he's also not as funny as Claude Rains. And, I don't know. You're right. He's just he's okay at best. This is kind of a lacking Vincent Price performance, in my opinion.
I feel like the issue was, in this movie, that a lot of either actors or, well, I guess really actors face today, and that's that they had to record his dialogue separately, right? I would assume.
Well, certainly in this scene, because he's not even there. But even in the scenes when he's bandaged, you're probably right.
Yeah, and I just feel like he probably had difficulty acting in that way, much in the same way that famously, or rather infamously, Ian McKellen had a breakdown on the set of The Hobbit when it was just him in front of a green screen and surrounded by all these like dwarves, which were just sticks with masks taped to them, and they had like flashing lights behind them, so he was supposed to turn and look and act.
Okay.
Without all of these actors, and he shouted, "This is not acting," or something, and he stormed off set.
Okay.
That's it. That's that story. Where did we leave off? Oh yeah. Vincent Price is roughing up Mr. Spears. He's fiddling with the car. I don't know any car stuff, but he's fiddling with the engine. He's lifting the hood and stuff. He chases Spears into the woods, or makes Spears run into the woods out of fright. And then he like chokes him with his scarf. He plops his face in a puddle, and then he starts choking him.
He breaks
with
the stick in half. I love that shot. That's my favorite shot.
Yeah, that's a really great shot. But he scares Spears so badly that he gets confession from Spears. Spears knows that Michael was killed by Richard Cobb.
He spooks the truth out of him.
Yeah, and Cobb was the one that promoted Spears to keep him quiet. And Cobb was also one at the beginning of the movie talking to Helen.
Cedric Hardwicke.
Yes.
Which, by the way, great John Wick porn parody name.
John Hardwicke?
Thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I mean, there's probably one called John Dick, but I'm just offering an alternative here.
Well, I mean, another good one would be like The Rock. It would just be The Cock, right? Or like, you could just use The Rock also as a porn parody. That's
the Nicolas Cage movie?
I was going to say, would it be just a parody of the Nicolas Cage Sean Connery movie? The Cock. I'll be the one who goes home and fucks the prom queen.
I don't want a 90-year-old Sean Connery near anyone that goes to high school. Goddamn Jerry Seinfeld over here.
Wait, what happened with Jerry Seinfeld?
Jerry Seinfeld, like, at the height of his fame, married someone who was, like, 18.
Oh my God,
when he was, like, in
really?
his mid-30s.
Really? That's
They
disgusting.
used to joke that, like, they got married in between science and math class or something like that.
That's disgusting. Why would you joke about that?
I mean, because he's a comedian and he's a fucking creep. I don't know. I mean...
Yeah. Anyways, speaking of creeps...
So Woody Allen steps up into this movie. I wasn't expecting that. Also, great. Joe May was an alias for Roman Polanski.
No, it wasn't. Was it really?
No. Roman Polanski was like... probably 5 years old when this movie came out.
Oh, you fucker. You got me. Again, I'm so gullible. God damn it.
Polanski's Polish. Joe May is German, Austrian, something like that, right?
Oh, they didn't get along. Anyway, speaking of people not getting along, Jeffrey lets Spears run back to his house where he then ties him up to keep him out of the way and to eventually take him to the coal mine, which we see later on. So Jeffrey makes his way to Cobb's house. After this, he confronts Cobb about the murder of his brother while Helen's in the room. And naturally, Cobb denies it, and we get this great shot where Vincent Price is sitting in a chair and Cobb like whips a marble bust at him. And it hits him, and they start shooting at Jeffrey, and Cobb runs down the stairs, firing his pistol off, and he runs right into Detective Sampson, who himself nearly catches Jeffrey when his cigar smoke silhouettes Jeffrey, I guess, if I could use that term.
Sure.
But here's the really interesting part, and it gave me the Invisible Man, the original Invisible Man vibes. It's pouring rain outside, so Jeffrey can't escape because the house is surrounded by constables who almost shoot him. And inside, these cops are decked out in these like awesome gas mask constable suits, and they're spraying smoke all over the house.
I love how they do this without giving the fiance a heads up, even. And they just like there's already the house is like covered in mustard gas, and they're like, "Hey, you need to get out of here." It's like, what the hell? This is very irresponsible police work here.
Yeah, they just show up and they're like, "Hey, by the way, we're gassing this place. I know you're on the other side of this house, so you got to walk through the gas. Thanks." But Jeffrey knocks out one of these cops and puts all of his gear on, and he blends in. He escapes by carrying a fake fainted Helen out to the front door. Yeah, he
tells her to faint, which is neat. I like that. It's clever.
Yeah, it's a clever little escape plan. So he then heads to Dr. Griffin's house, where he just kind of waits for Dr. Griffin and Helen, who's at the lab at the coal mine for whatever reason. They show up, and clearly Vincent Price is turning a little insane, because if you remember from the first movie, the invisibility drug makes you go insane.
Right.
And I really like this scene, because Vincent Price is kind of ranting and raving about being able to rule the world and sit in on like political meetings and behind closed doors with the monarchy and stuff like that.
Be able to get a confession out of OJ once and for all.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I also want to point out, this is kind of the plan, the world domination plan, in The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, another Sean Connery movie, and Invisible Man movie.
Yeah, I was going to say The Invisible Man's in that, right? I haven't seen that movie, and I've never seen it all the way through. I think I told you this. We probably talked about this in our Dr. No commentary track, but that movie is more interesting for the behind-the-scenes stuff, because it is what got Sean Connery to retire, and apparently he retired pretty much just because he hated the director that much. And then the director also stopped working in Hollywood after that because he hated Sean Connery that much.
Classic Sean.
It's a movie that ruined lives, that League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Well, and now in that movie, like, the bad guy, I'm a little hazy on it because I haven't seen it in like a decade.
Is the bad guy Moriarty?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's the Phantom of the Opera, isn't it?
No, isn't it Moriarty, but he looks like the Phantom of the Opera?
Oh, maybe it's that. Okay.
He steals the blood, or he steals like the drug from the Invisible Man's lab, and he injects like all these like super soldier people with it, and they're all going to be invisible and highly trained soldiers, and they can like sneak behind doors and into political stuff and sneak behind enemy lines. Anyways, it's kind of neat. Oh, I also want to point out, in that movie, they find the Invisible Man in the snow because he's been burned all over with a flamethrower. And I mean, if that's not one way to smoke out an Invisible Man, I don't know.
Sure, yeah.
So, because Jeffrey is certifiably insane at this point, or close to it, Dr. Griffin knocks him out by putting some drugs in his wine, and he ties him to a chair. But he manages to escape anyways when the cops come calling. He goes back to Cobb's house, kidnaps him at gunpoint, leads him through the front door in a kind of exciting scene where he has to get Cobb to kind of weasel his way past the guards, which he just knocks out anyways.
Yeah, I think kind of exciting is a great phrase to use to describe really the entire movie.
That's great. You're very right. You've hit the nail on the head with that. Jeffrey takes Cobb to the mine. He attempts to get a confession out of Cobb with Mr. Spears in the room, who then, it's a convoluted thing, Cobb tries to kill him. But as far as I know, Jeffrey saves him. That's what it looks like in the movie anyways. Jeffrey has him hanging from, like, he has a noose tied around his neck, he's on a chair. Cobb kicks out the chair, and it looks like Jeffrey reaches over and saves him at the last second. Yeah, I mean, so he's not entirely a monster, I guess. But then he chases...
If you're trying to prolong someone's life so that you get a confession out of them and then you'll murder them, I'm not sure it really makes them, a moral subject, I guess. you know.
Well, I don't think... Well, I think he was planning... Well, never mind. You're right.
Because we get the Get Carter climax. He's fighting him on that coal
on the coal
thing.
Trolley.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he chases him through the crowds of people at the mine, and cops are just blasting away at thin air, which is pretty cool. And he chases him onto a coal trolley, and he's got Cobb pinned, but Samson plugs him off of Cobb, but it's too late for Cobb because he gets tipped over into a giant coal pit with all the coal. And as he's on his deathbed...
That looked like a stunt, by the way, the guy falling in there. I don't think that's a dummy. That's a pretty neat stunt.
That did look like a stunt, yeah.
Because he had some, like, the arms moved a bit as he was falling, so that's cool. I mean, he falls, 20, 30 feet? Like, it's a neat stunt. Overall, I like this scene a lot. I think this is a fun climax. I'm a sucker for a good...
Yeah, and this...
automated coal train fight scene, whether it's Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, or, like I mentioned, Get Carter, has the climax takes place in the filthy, fucking disgusting Newcastle upon Tyne coal train things, and it's a coal carts, I guess. Carts, not train, because a coal train is a passenger train. But it's a neat setting. It's exciting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, it's kind of exciting.
I'll say that this sequence is actually exciting. This elevates the movie for me.
This climax is more exciting than anything else in the movie, but I don't know if I'd call it exciting. Capital E.
Okay.
Anyways.
Semantics.
Cobb's dying of blood loss and he confesses to Helen and Dr. Griffin, I in fact did kill Michael. So now they're trying to look for Jeffrey, who's disappeared, and he's bleeding to death from this gunshot wound, and he's stolen this clothes off a scarecrow, and he stumbles back to the mine to Dr. Griffin's office. The problem is he can't operate on him. He's gonna bleed out, but he just can't see anything. So he walks out, and I love this. He walks out, and he goes, and all the miners are like, "Oh, how's Jeffrey?" And he's like, "Oh, he's gonna die because I can't operate on him. He needs a blood transfusion. Can anybody help?" And they're all like, "Yeah, we can all help." And I don't think that's how blood transfusions work, but I'll give this movie a pass.
Well, yeah, you at the very least you have to have a matching type, right? I mean,
yeah, not just
we're
like,
talking
hey,
bare minimum here.
Take 150 different coal miners' blood and put it into your body. So he gets this transfusion.
Also, if we're talking about health concerns,
yeah,
taking blood from coal miners, you may only live another 2 or 3 years, right?
Yeah, you get like an immediate transfusion and you die of like black lung a year later.
Yeah, exactly.
So he gets this transfusion, and it turns out that the transfusion is actually the antidote to the invisibility serum, because he has enough people's blood in his body that he just becomes visible again. Like not tainted blood, I guess. And then he becomes
it's really neat how they do this, how it starts with the veins and the arteries, and then it's the muscles, and that looks really cool, and then we finally get him, and I think I like the layering of that effect. It looks really neat.
Yeah, that was a great effect, and I'm trying to remember how the original one ended. Did Claude Rains just reappear?
I don't think they did the veins and arteries and then the muscles. I think he just kind of slowly came back all in one. I could be wrong, though. It's been a while.
Yeah.
To clarify, it's not been a while since I've been wrong. It's been a while since I've seen The Invisible Man.
Yeah. And, that's it. VP wakes up, says hello to Helen, and he's free. He's a free man. He's cleared of any wrongdoing. He's visible, and he's sane. So all's well that ends well. Patrick, your thoughts on The Invisible Man Returns?
The movie's okay. I don't find it all that thrilling. I think it's got a couple of very good scenes. I think this scene where he torments Willie Spears in the woods is a good deal of fun.
Yeah.
The scene where Cobb in the house discovers that Jeffrey is implicating him, and then starts just like shooting around is pretty fun. And then going into the gassing the place up is fun. And then the coal scene is fun. I think the rest of the movie, it's not a poorly paced movie, but it's just I think we're lacking those like compelling performances. I don't really. It's weird because it's like this is a fugitive movie where it's Vincent Price is trying to solve his murder, and yet I don't know. I just don't feel like the story ever gives it that aspect. The movie never gives that aspect of the story as much attention as it should. Like even for example, even though I said this is a good scene, when he's going after Willie Spears, it's less about getting information from him, and it's more about him just kind of fucking with him and scaring him, He ends up getting the information, of course, but it really is more of just a wacky hijinks scene that ends up giving him information. So I don't know. I think it's a decent movie, but really, before the climax, I would have said it was like, meh. And then the climax happens, like, okay, this is decent. Jim, what about you?
I think it. I don't know if pales in comparison to The Invisible Man would be the most.
Well, it doesn't pale. It's translucent in comparison.
It's translucent in comparison, yeah.
Or transparent. Excuse me. Translucent is like semi-transparent. Right?
You're right. Yeah, it's not. I pretty much agree with everything you said. I think the most exciting parts of the movie to watch are when the cops are doing things. And by that I mean specifically when Detective Sampson's on screen or...
Yeah. I would have liked him to have gotten more screen time.
I don't want to say everybody else does a poor job of acting in this movie. I just think he's a head and shoulders above everybody else for whatever reason. But he's fantastic. He's a lot of fun to watch. My biggest complaint about this movie is that it almost feels like it doesn't know what it wants to be. It starts out as a kind of...
I can understand that.
Fugitive murder mystery.
Yes.
And then it kind of turns into a sad kind of love story about
there's a little bit of melodrama there.
Yeah, and where you have Helen watching Jeffrey kind of slip into insanity.
Mm-hmm.
And then it ends as an action movie, but only for the last 5 minutes, maybe?
Yeah.
All that action is just people falling over in a crowd and and cops firing off guns and then a guy falling off or falling into a coal pile.
I can accept like kind of minimal action like that if that's what we have to work with, just on the premise of the movie or that there's an invisible guy, and so any fight between someone and an invisible person is just going to be that person struggling by themselves on a little minecart thing. I can accept that, but so I do find that stuff exciting, but there's not a whole lot of it. And I do agree. I think that the changes in tones don't work that well. I think if you look at the original Invisible Man, they worked better because that also had the aspects of melodrama with the fiancé character and stuff. But I think those worked better really just because Claude Rains' performance made them work. And I don't think Vincent Price is on here in this movie is on Claude Rains' level. And I'll also say I would have liked a better villain here too. You know what I mean? I think we're a little lacking in the villain department. And maybe that's just the difference of like the Invisible Man works better as a villain than as a hero, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's the strange thing. The Invisible Man in this movie, I don't want to say he's constantly skirting the line of hero and villain, but he's coming close enough to the villainous, to a kind of villainous area. Right. And that's something else that doesn't really work for me. If you're going to make him a hero, make him a hero. If you're going to make him a villain, make him a villain.
Yeah, well, I think they can make him kind of a tortured villain, like an anti-hero, but I don't think Price's performance works with that. I don't think he makes that, if that's what they're going for, I don't think I think it could work, I just think it doesn't here. So I sort of understand what you're saying, but I want to push back on it just a tiny bit. I
also have an issue with like the comedy in it. The comedy in it isn't very funny. Now, I don't expect it to be like hilarious, laugh out loud stuff, but the original Invisible Man, when there was that hijinks scene where Claude Rains runs through the village, takes off on the bicycle, and it's like knocking things over, like that was enjoyable to watch for the effects, for his performance.
The original Invisible Man makes me laugh. It makes me laugh. This movie, I can understand a few things that are kind of funny, but I agree, I'm not laughing, and I agree.
Yeah, and I will say, I mean, two scenes in particular, which might also only be might be the only two comedic scenes. One is that bumbling constable coming into the cottage. I couldn't stand that actor for whatever reason. I thought it was just a little too ridiculous, and then also this kind of bumbling groundskeeper. Two bumbling people in the same scene. It was just like, it was just too much to handle.
Oh yeah, because the constable, because he was on the phone and the guy told him, make sure you don't let him take his clothes off, and he's like, oh, he's with a woman, he would never take his clothes off. I found that stuff kind of funny just because it's like, oh, it's the 1940s and we can't have sex in movies. It's almost like funny in a way that it's dated. I did kind of enjoy that, but yeah, I agree with you.
And then even the hijinks scene in this one with
Spears,
it started out as kind of funny, and when he's fiddling with the car and he's drunk and whatever. But then when he chases him into the woods, it should have a kind of scarier tone. It should be a little darker, because at one point he like pushes his head into a puddle. Like he's tormenting this guy and he's choking him with his necktie, for Christ's sake. And it should be scarier, but after he sits up from his head being in the puddle, he goes, oh, I must have dozed off. Oh, I'm awake now. Ho, ho, ho.
Right,
like,
yeah.
that's not funny. This guy's kind of half insane, and he might be actually trying to kill you, you know?
Yeah, I understand.
So that's really all I have to say about The Invisible Man. It was all right. It was
a decent movie.
You're right. It wasn't it wasn't unenjoyable to watch, but it was certainly a far cry from the first Invisible Man.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the original Invisible Man, could watch it basically any time. This movie, probably not going to go out of my way to watch it again. You know, if it's on Turner Classic Movies, maybe I'll turn it on. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand on that. So you want to talk about a movie that I will go out of my way to watch again?
You know what, Patrick? I was just about to say the exact same thing. Yes.
All right. Well, this is surprising to me because I didn't expect you to enjoy Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity because you were teasing me, you were giving me shit about it. You said you didn't believe it was a real movie, and I think you were mostly focusing on the title, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, but well, here's the thing: B movies can have some really goofy, fun titles. You know, we already did Spookies. Spookies is terrible. It's a fun title. Another classic, I would say it's more in line with this than it is with Spookies, is Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers. You know, they're selling you on that title, and title, you know it's going to be sleaze.
Yeah.
You know it's going to have chainsaws, and you get the impression, okay, it's going to be tongue-in-cheek, kind of funny. Here, with Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity, if you just had a movie called Slave Girls, that could be 70s Jesus Franco Euro trash exploitation. But the From Beyond Infinity part not only gives it, obviously, a sci-fi feel, but also, I think, kind of a tongue-in-cheek feel to the title, where this movie, I wouldn't call it a comedy, but it obviously is not taking itself too seriously, and that's the right way to go for a movie like this, I think.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is a Charles Band produced film. His name does not appear in the credits, just like it didn't with Dr. Alien, but this film reeks of Charles Band. We've got some actors that he worked with a lot. And it's directed by Ken Dixon, who I don't know this guy. I don't know what he did, but anyways, it is one of roughly 7,000 films that's based on the Most Dangerous Game story. This is a story that you and I talked about a little bit when we talked about King Kong, because at RKO Studios, while they were shooting King Kong, they were also shooting The Most Dangerous Game, and one of the directors of King Kong directed that movie. So The Most Dangerous Game, it's a thriller adventure story about a guy that hunts people on like an island or something, right? I know I've read it. I read it probably when I was in high school or something. But it's been adapted into a bunch of things, you know, especially in the science fiction realm. There, you know, Star Trek has done their kind of thing on it. The Outer Limits had a Most Dangerous Game episode. You could maybe even draw a connection to something like The Hunger Games, you know, to some more modern things like that, or The Running Man.
We also kind of have already covered a movie based around a similar sort of storyline, plotline. Yeah, Ready or Not.
Yeah, Ready or Not has similarities. Yeah, I'll give you that. Okay, so where to start with this movie? So the reason I like this movie, I mean, let's just right off the bat, Elizabeth Kaitan's in it. Elizabeth Kaitan is like, it's her and Monique Gabrielle, but she is one of my two favorite 80s, 90s B-movie crushes. She's the lead here. She's one of the two slave girls from Beyond Infinity.
Yeah.
She's amazing. She has 3 outfits in the movie. She has bikini loincloth thing, kind of, again, sort of Raquel Welchian. And she's got a white nightie, and she's got naked. Those are her 3 outfits.
Yeah.
So I think some great costume design here. I'll give credit to whoever did that.
Great costume design.
But really, I think the reason I enjoy a movie like this, and I mean, granted, I'm talking about this movie positively, and I've talked about Charles Band positively in the past. Don't get me wrong. I've seen a ton of shit from him. I've seen a ton of movies like this that I don't like. But what I like about this movie it does the bare minimum of like everything you need it to do.
Mm-hmm.
The sets are passable. Like they're passable in like a low budget sense. If you go to the theater to watch Dune and you have sets like this, you're going to be fucking disappointed. But like in a movie like this, I think it works.
It's passable in the same sense that the original Star Trek sets were passable, and the first season of TNG, their sets were passable for the most part. Like, you know what I'm talking about? Like, that's
a decent comparison, I think.
Well, it's also got that same kind of vibe, because you hit a point in the 80s. Because when did this movie come out? It was
87.
Yeah, so you hit a point in the early to late 80s where everything that is kind of centered around space has some vibes going to it. And it's like Star Trek vibes that they're kind of aping off of, Star Wars vibes, or Alien vibes.
Yeah.
And this one plays up the kind of Star
Galaxy
Trek
of Terror, Forbidden World, or like very much in the Alien vein.
And this one, I would say, plays up the Star Trek and Star Wars vibes.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think, although we do get a weird-ass fucking creature, I can't say it resembles a xenomorph, but it's inspired. And that's another thing. That,
it looks like the Borg.
Yes, it actually does. This predates the Borg. Or does it? I mean, I think TNG started around 87, but I don't think you get the Borg right away there. Yeah, so there is a Borg quality, but there's another thing too with the creatures, with the robots. Yes, they're bad costumes, but they're charmingly bad. You know, there was effort put into them, there's craft put into them. There just isn't really the budget there to make them look great, because the design isn't bad. It's just the execution isn't great, and when they move, it's very clearly a person in a costume moving. But I like that they have robot sound effects when a person turns his head or something, and it's like it's very clearly just a person, but they have the little robot sound effect. So I like those aspects of this movie.
It's on par with like 90s kids movies that feature like a robot or something. You know what I mean?
Yes, and it's got a lot more tits than those. So like really, this movie's got everything.
This is great. Yeah, best movie.
Anyways, let's talk a little bit about what actually happens here. I don't think we're going to spend too much time on this because it's Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity. But we have two slaves, two bikini-clad slaves. These are, what's her name, Darla?
And Tisa?
Oh, yeah, Tisa, which I'm not a fan of that name. Yeah, so Daria, that's Elizabeth Kaitan, and Tisa, who is Cindy Beale. Don't know anything about her. She's pretty woman too. She doesn't have the same Elizabeth Kaitan qualities as Elizabeth Kaitan, I would argue, but they escape from their prison. They steal a spaceship or hijack a spaceship, and again, this is, I think, very clever, whatever. But another thing that I like about this movie is that they didn't have the budget to have like a spaceship like exterior. So you just see it in a matte painting, and then you see like a model flying around, and then you see the interior set, and I'm like, okay, good, that's perfect, that's fine, it works. I also liked how in the facility that they escape from, those people are just straight up wearing Boba Fett costumes.
Dude, I know. The best part about that,
but it's like fat Boba Fett costumes.
Well,
it's like Book of Boba Fett,
Boba Fett, actually.
What's that?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
It's like short and fat Boba Fett costume. Like the helmet is just like too big, too fat, too wide.
I like instead of going with like Boba Fett color, because it's literally a Boba Fett costume. They just painted it all black.
Oh yeah, so it's almost like a cross between Boba Fett and Darth Vader.
And it's just two dudes with stashes under their costumes.
So after they escape, they escape in what's essentially a lifeboat, so they can't get far. But they do crash land onto a planet that's near them. Now, how do they achieve the crash landing? Well, we don't see it. We just meet back up with Elizabeth Kaitan on the beach. Because why not? And she's been separated. The perfect place to
meet up with her.
Yeah. It's either the beach or the bedroom. It's one of the two with her. Or the Vice Academy, because she's in 4 of those movies. So she makes her way to a house, a mansion, a castle, and meets her host named Zed, and finds that Tisa's already there, as are 2 other people. And these are, I think, brother and sister?
They are, yeah.
And these are, the Brinke Stevens is the sister. She plays Shala. and then there's Rick. And so at first the host is very gracious, but eventually Rick pulls Daria aside and says, listen, this guy, we used to have 5 or 6 other people staying here, but he goes out and he hunts them at night. He's like, the only reason he hasn't hunted me yet is I've been pretending to be sick or something. And she doesn't really believe him, but eventually comes to believe him. And then so the rest of the movie is basically an attempt at an escape. We get a little bit of hunting. There's not probably as much as you might expect. There isn't. I don't know. But, I mean, they're setting traps up outside, so it's got like a Rambo vibe.
Yeah.
One scene I really enjoyed was after Rick and Daria had been setting traps up outside, they come back inside to her bedroom, and they know that Zed is outside listening in on them, or like ready to see like what they're doing or something. So they pretend to be having sex. And then he's just like looking in, he peeps for a bit, and then he turns and leaves. And the second he leaves, Daria pushes Rick so hard off the bed that he falls and like hits his head. And he's like in pain. And then I swear to God, within 2 seconds, before a word has even been spoken, after this like fake lovemaking scene, they proceed to make actual love.
Yeah, it's amazing. That scene's my favorite.
I love the laziness of like there's no genuine connection between these two characters. It's just they're having sex because we want to show off the goods in this movie. You know, there's really no other reason for it, and I like that. I like the creativity there.
One of my other favorite scenes, I like when Tisa knows that those two are out like traipsing around the woods, and so she uses her womanly wiles to lure the robot out to the beach to watch her strip down and go swimming. And this robot's like, yeah, sure, I'll take a peek. I'll come out with you.
And this is funny too, because like you'll have this in film and television where like, a character has to pretend to seduce someone to distract them or something, but she's distracting a robot who, I mean, it works. The robots are effectively distracted, but did she have reason to believe it would work?
None
They're
whatsoever.
Robots. I mean, maybe she figured they're actually people in robot costumes, which she's just correct about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, this is a low-budget film. Let's make no mistake about that. These are probably, I would guess, recycled sets. I think the woods, the forest, the jungle, whatever you want to call that, looks pretty good.
Well, it all looks Star Trek-y from like that first season of TNG. And
yeah, I think that's fair.
And like a scene that really made me think about it was right after everybody's sitting at like the dinner table with Zed, and he pulls out that weird instrument thing that he's playing, and they do that classic Trek. I don't even know what to call it. The panorama of lights on the screen. You know what I'm talking about? Like they superimpose all these lights onto the film, and that I was just like, oh yes, I've seen this many times. You're taking some tricks from Star Trek.
Yeah, and of course the mansion is very eclectically decorated. Lots of bears and lions and stuff like that. A lot of stuffed animals like that.
Yeah.
And we eventually get the reveal of heads of the humans he has been hunting and killing. And, well, you know, they look a little, maybe more than a little papier-mâché-y.
Yeah.
You know, they don't look great. Because we eventually see Rick's head on there, and that kind of looks awful. But, okay, so what else happens in this movie? Well, Brinke Stevens gets raped. I wish this is the only movie that I could say that about, but I've probably seen her get raped more on film than any other actress. Or it's her or Linnea. It's one of the two. Eventually, when Zed figures out that they know what's going on, he has them all down, chained on this pillar, which is, you know, an iconic image, I think, because they're in the bikini loincloths, and, you know, it's classic stuff. And then eventually he goes about on this hunting thing, and he I think he says something about there's like a forbidden realm, or no, the
Phantom Zone.
The Phantom Zone, excuse me. Yes, it's the Forbidden Zone in Planet of the Apes, but it's very much the same thing, except it's not really. I mean, we see why it's kind of forbidden later on, but it's also not like if he tells them not to go there when he's trying to hunt them, like Why wouldn't they go there?
Yeah.
I don't know. So he's hunting. He's got his crossbow that shoots lasers, which is pretty cool.
Like Chewbacca's crossbow.
This guy pulls it off better than Chewbacca, though, let's be honest.
Yeah, I agree.
And then, okay, so Brinke Stevens gets killed, and then the other two make it to the Phantom Zone, where there's this, like, ancient temple thing. But there's also these monsters.
Well, no, hold on a second.
Okay.
Let's talk about how they show up to this ancient temple, and they can immediately read these weird, like, hieroglyphic inscriptions.
Yeah.
And then...
What, you have a problem with that?
No, you're right, I don't. Never mind.
No, I mean, listen, it's Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity. It's not Dune, okay? We're not dealing with some, incredibly well thought out world here. This movie is what it is. And to be fair about these women, yes, I'm pretty sure when they crash landed to this planet, they didn't know what planet it was. So in theory, they shouldn't know anything about it or know anything about the cultures there. But to be fair to them, we don't know where they're from.
That's true.
Are they Earth women? Are they Mars women? Are they Pluto women?
All we know is that they're slave girls from Beyond Infinity.
Right, they're from Beyond Infinity, which is key. To infinity and beyond. Someone at Pixar was a fan of this movie, which good for them.
Right. My other favorite part of this movie is how similar Zed looks to Christian Bale.
I was thinking about
the remake
that.
of Psycho, right? Or
this is
American
a great.
Psycho.
Yeah, this is. You just give him a poncho, and I mean he really does have a Christian Bale look because he's got like kind of the slick back hair, right? He's like an uglier version of Christian Bale, I guess.
Yeah, he's like discount Christian Bale.
Yeah, very discount Christian Bale. Because even, by the way, in 87, you want to know what Christian Bale was doing in 87? He appeared in a fucking Spielberg movie. He was a kid, and he was making better movies than this. So, good for him. Christian Bale, early start to his career. He's in Henry V with director and star Kenneth Branagh in 1989, one of the greatest movies of all time.
Wow.
Yeah, Christian Bale, quite the career, even as a child. I don't believe he appears in any Charles Band films, but I would love to be proven wrong. Maybe he's in The Killer Eye, Halloween Haunt. I don't think I've seen that one yet.
Viewers, let us know, or listeners, let us know.
So yeah, there's a very much a Christian Bale vibe, and I'm going to say, not that I love his performance or anything, but I think he's good enough. I think he's intimidating here. I mean, it's not a Christian Bale performance, but he's fine.
I think he nails weirdo on a planet who is malicious. You know what I mean?
Weirdo on a planet. There's the three great roles. There's the tragic hero. There's the Machiavel, and there's the weirdo on the planet.
Well, you know what I mean, right? Like he really nails that. He's got it. He's got it going for him.
One of the great weirdo on a planet roles in film history. I'll give you that one. I'll give you that.
Can we make a shirt that just says weirdo on a planet?
You're always the one mentioning making shirts. You do it.
Okay,
Get off your lazy ass and do it.
I'll send it to you. You can put it on Twitter.
All right. Anyways. So, we're back at the ancient temple, the Phantom Zone temple. They run into like a zombie thing. And this is one of the bigger laughs I had in the movie where they just like, I think they shoot it or something and it just like falls over just like really suddenly, and it was just very funny to me.
Yeah, yeah.
But the thing in this temple has monsters in it. But it also has guns. So we get a really cool shot of the two women with their big laser guns aiming it like towards the camera, and then they kind of swing away from that. Yeah, so we've got a... How would you describe this monster? Well, you said Borg earlier. He's a Borg. He's like part machine, part creature, I guess.
Anybody familiar with The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, another Lord of the Rings reference here, there's a character in it named Gothmog. And he's
is that the orc that looks like Yoda?
Sort of.
Like
but
if
he's
Yoda
like,
was
got
left
like a
in
really
a microwave.
Fucked up face. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
that's I've always called him Yoda. He's got the Yoda ears.
Yeah, this cyborg thing looks like that, but cyborg.
Okay.
And that's how I would
there's
describe
cyborg. And it should be noted, of course, these creatures, these wonderful creatures, brought to us by the late, great John Carl Buechler, who we've talked about. He brought us the Ghoulies. He brought us the Reanimator. I mean, this guy is an effects maestro, but he usually worked with a much smaller budget than the other great effects people like Rick Baker or Screaming Mad George did. But I think he still, that's the thing I appreciate out of him. He's still able to get pretty good product regardless of what budget he has to work with. Because again, robot costumes, they're not great. They look like costumes, but the design is pretty neat. And then this cyborg monster thing, I think, is even better than the robots, and it's more convincing. He's got like a laser hand or laser gun like attached to his hand or something. It's good. It's satisfying.
Yeah. It's awesome.
It's a good monster. Not exactly a show stealer. I mean, it's tough to be when Elizabeth Kaitan is in the film and has a nude scene. So, but you know, as far as monsters go, it's pretty good.
Well, you know what it nails with these monsters? It's that, or like with these costumes or these creatures, is that they don't look human. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, a lot of really crappy, low-budget movies have crap costumes that is clearly something just draped over.
Star Trek.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just something draped over a human, you know. And this looks way better. This kind of elevates the movie. I wouldn't say up to another level, but it definitely elevates it a little.
Yeah, this moves it from 4.5 stars to 5 stars. I think I'll give it an extra half a star due to the John Carl Buechler work.
Okay, yeah.
No, and
I'd be down for that.
We reach our exciting climax, which is back at the castle mansion thing, and it's the two women against Zed and his two robots. The entire movie, we never see more than 2 robots. You'd think he'd have more, but again, limited budget. And then the monster also shows up, and the monster doesn't really belong. The monster doesn't really have motivation. He's just kind of there to wreck shit. But this is a lot of fun because it's Elizabeth Kaitan fighting Zed with like swords.
Well, she shows up dressed like a gladiator. Like, I don't know.
Oh yeah, she's got the shield thing like on her arm. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. And then and she's fighting him, and then the robots step in. And what's the other one? Tisa, right? She picks up
Tisa takes out the robots.
Yeah, and she picks up like a chest plate from the wall and bounces the laser from one robot into the other robot's heart, which kills it dead, which is great.
And then she also drops the thing, and then thankfully the other robot doesn't shoot at her because she is defenseless at that moment, but whatever.
Yeah. The best part is, though, when the cyborg shows up, beats the crap out of Zed, and then goes to kill the ladies. What's her name? I forget. What's the main one's name again?
Daria.
Thank you. She picks up like a lightning mace.
Yeah.
And just cracks it over this cyborg, and it vaporizes it. It's awesome.
Yeah. You're telling me that shit isn't the most exciting thing you've ever seen? I mean, again, this movie's on a curve. Like, for what this movie could pull off, I think it's incredibly engaging and exciting.
Absolutely.
This isn't a Terminator 2 James Cameron level action sequence. I get it. It's a Ken Dixon, Charles Band action sequence.
But it's so cool.
But I think they pulled off something fun, something engaging to look at on screen.
Well, and because, I mean, the most exciting part for me was throughout the movie, that lightning mace was like on the table in front of Zed. As soon as she picks it up, you're like, oh, this is going to be neat. She's just going to crack it over the head of this silly-looking cyborg. But they just like a big crack of light, and the thing vaporizes. You have no clue what's coming next out of this movie, and that was exciting.
Oh, yeah. Anyways, with Zed badly injured at this point, he limps his way to his throne room, and the other 2 women escape on a spaceship. And once they are far enough away, then Zed blows the planet up. He like presses a self-destruct button. I don't know if he's trying to kill them also, or if it's just a pure suicide thing. I don't really understand, but I also don't care that much.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity. So, Jim, do you have an interpretation of the ending there?
No.
Okay.
It ended. I did like...
It ended.
Yeah, I did like how when they got, like, there's all kinds of, like, silly, spacey, sci-fi jibber-jabber going on. Like, in the beginning, when they're chained in this in this cell. Hold on, I wrote it down. It's this great line. They're trying to break out of these cuffs and then, like, open this door. But one of them says the line, "If we can reverse the polarity of the cuffs, we can steal a starship." Like, what the fuck does that even mean? But it's a great line.
It means exactly what we saw that it means. They steal a starship.
Exactly. You're right.
I guess. But then, I don't know.
Then at the end...
They don't really steal a starship so much because they say it's like a lifeboat. It's like it's basically an escape pod that they steal, but whatever.
But then at the end of the movie, when they hop into Zed's spaceship, I think one of the first things... I think Tisa says it. She goes, "Oh, did we have to take something so..." Oh, what was it? She was talking about, like, the luxury. She was referencing, like, the luxury of the spaceship. She's like, "Oh, do we have to take something so conspicuous or something?" And it's like, what? We don't know what this spaceship looks like. There's no, like...
No, yeah, we don't see the exterior.
Yeah, there's no, like, level.
But the interior, there's, like, some zebra print or something on the interior of this one. We didn't have that before, I don't think.
No, it's a
It's the
same
fucking set, I'm sure, but they dressed it up nice.
Yeah, they just pulled half of it out and put a couch in it with some zebra print. But yeah, I think it was a really enjoyable movie. I was certainly engaged from beginning to end. It is a classic crappy B-movie, but it's kind of quaint and lovable in its execution, if that makes sense.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. I think it's like I've been saying, it's not my favorite B-movie by any means. It's not like, for one, a lot of my favorite B-movies are funny because they're so awful. This movie isn't really that, but it is charming. It is quaint, and I like a film that kind of makes me feel like I could have made it in a few aspects, you know.
Yes, yeah.
I don't think I know anyone in my personal life as attractive as Elizabeth Kaitan, so, you know, I can't say I'd have as good a cast, but I don't know. I feel like I could have built these sets in a way, you know. I feel like I could have built this robot costume a little bit, you know, if I just had the time. And I like that they pulled off something that's genuinely entertaining with all the limitations that they have. And you see the limitations on screen. You know they're not working with much, you know, but they do what they need to do. I think, like, in the first escape pod scene where they're flying into the atmosphere of the new planet. We don't have much of a budget here, but we get some red lighting on the inside, the set of the inside of the spaceship, and we get some smoke outside the windshield, and we get a little bit of, like, the little kind of glowing light on the outside, you know, suggesting fire, like, you know, entering the atmosphere. And I'm like, for what it is, that's pretty good, you know? Like, I would, again, these effects and stuff, if I'm watching a Star Wars movie, I expect better. But if I'm watching a Charles Band movie, I got more than what I expected.
We keep on referencing the quality of the sets, the costumes, etc. You can tell by looking at it that they don't have much of a budget, but none of them look bad, though.
It's a relative quality. It's not quality with a capital Q. It's
quality with a capital Z. I don't know.
What the hell? They did. I mean, they did what they could. They did what they had to,
and they made it work. And I think the outcome of all their work really is fine, and it's something that I would gladly watch again.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, Elizabeth Kaitan is hot. Like that's I'm not gonna lie, that's a big part of the appeal of this movie.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that one for sure.
So, Jim, which of these two films do you prefer?
Slave Girls, for sure. I mean, I assume you're going to have a similar answer to me, if not almost the exact same. I think pound for pound, minute for minute, Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity was a much more exciting, thrilling movie, and it even did the kind of mystery aspect better than The Return of the Invisible, or The Invisible Man Returns. Not that I have anything against Vincent Price or anybody in that movie. It felt like a lot of the actors weren't, I don't want to say doing their best, but it just felt kind of lazy or tired, I guess, is perhaps a better word to use, other than the fellow who played Detective Sampson,
Cecil
where
Kellaway.
In Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity, they're not the best actors, but you can tell that they're trying really hard. And I think that shines through, and everything about Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity just comes together to make a genuinely fun and exciting and silly movie, whereas The Invisible Man Returns is just tiring.
I'm going to agree ultimately with your pick. I do prefer Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity. I'm going to very much disagree with a lot of the reasoning. I do not think Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity pulled off the mystery aspect better than The Invisible Man Returns, even though the mystery aspect wasn't that strong in The Invisible Man Returns. I mean, what is it in Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity? It's the most dangerous game. We've seen that story 1,000 times. We know where it's going. I think ultimately, just beginning to end, Invisible Man Returns is just more entertaining for me. I don't want to say there's not a dull moment, but there's fewer dull moments. And, neither film overstays its welcomes. Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity is about an hour and a half. Invisible Man Returns about an hour and 20, so they're both relatively short movies. I do think, again, I this sort of agrees with what you were saying, but it's not that the acting is poor in The Invisible Man Returns, but I don't think it quite works for some of the things that the movie is trying to do. And yeah, I won't say I agree, the acting Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity is not great, but everybody does what they need to do, Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just prefer the movie. I think it's more enjoyable. I think The Invisible Man Returns is fairly dull, really, outside of those 3 scenes that I talked about.
I will push back a bit on the mystery aspect, because I do agree with you in the sense that it's a story that we've seen a million times. However, there was at least a glimmer of hope that story wasn't going to turn out to be the exact same. This Zed character could have actually been
I'm not sure there
guy.
Was for me, but okay.
Because again, he was just some weirdo on a planet, right?
That fits the profile of Most Dangerous Game.
It does.
Antagonist, doesn't it?
But there's a possibility
weirdo on a planet
that he wasn't.
Listen, it's either the Most Dangerous Game. If you get a weirdo on a planet like that, it's either Most Dangerous Game, which I just thought of another example of the recent Fantasy Island movie is kind of a Most Dangerous Game premise, I would say. It's either going to be that or it's going to be The Island of Dr. Moreau. In both cases, I've seen thousands of adaptations of those 2 stories. So for me, there wasn't much of a hope that it wouldn't be something like that, but whatever. I thought if the film had any twists, it would maybe be that the robots used to be people or something like that. And again, we go like a Dr. Moreau, but with robots.
Yeah, or that the creatures in the Phantom Zone used to be people, or whatever.
Yeah, except the creatures were such a small part of the movie. I understand the creature is the first fucking thing we see in the movie, basically, because there's that. It's not a cold open because it comes after the credits, but the opening scene is the creature hunting a woman, and then Zed steps in and takes care of business. But then you don't see the creatures for a long time. The Phantom Zone is kind of underdeveloped, and then the creature just pops up. And he's not even the first of the Phantom Zone monsters to pop up because there's that weird zombie thing too. But whatever, it's fine. The movie's entertaining. It's not great.
Oh, you're right. I forgot about this.
Yeah, there's the little zombie guy. I told you that was my biggest laugh.
Yeah, and they just turn around and stab him in the throat.
Yeah. So, Jim.
Yeah.
How do you think this holds up as a drive-in double feature?
Oh man, I was going to ask you. I don't think it does.
You will ask me eventually, but we both need to answer this question. Let's rip that Band-Aid off.
Okay, I'll rip it off. I don't think it does. I don't think it does really hold up as a double feature. And again, it's not that... And I think really the main problem is The Invisible Man Returns with this. I just think it's too slow, even though it's not a super slow movie, but it just feels too slow, too... perhaps 1940s-y to be paired with an 80s space adventure movie.
Direct-to-video.
Yeah,
piece of shit. Yeah.
Yeah, full of women getting their tits out, But, and again, I just think I would be too tired to care about Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity after watching The Invisible Man Returns. But that's also just me. I don't really have a problem with The Invisible Man Returns. I just don't think it would work well opposite it. How about you?
I don't feel too strongly, but I am going to disagree. I think we in terms of similarities, we've got kind of fugitive on the run stories with both films. But the big difference is Invisible Man Returns, though I would say more of a comedy than Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity, also more serious, just by nature of the filmmaking isn't a complete joke. So we have that wrap up, and then immediately we get like sex appeal and Slave Girls from Beyond Infinity, and it's just women in bikinis the entire movie. And then I'm like, okay, yeah. And I mean, like you're saying, oh, you're too tired to, like, no, you're not. You immediately wake up when you see Elizabeth Kaitan, let's be honest. So yeah, I don't think it's a great double feature. I don't think either of these films are great, quite frankly, but I think for what they are, I think they complement each other in this kind of the sci-fi thriller adventure kind of goofy way. So here's what we've got next week. So I will likely have a special guest, but that hasn't been confirmed yet. I'm hoping it works out because I've got a Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and a Hunter S. Thompson expert among my acquaintances, and we will be talking about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, the Johnny Depp film, as well as Hellfest, the 2018 haunted house amusement park festival set slasher film, which I think I may have been the only person on earth to see that one in the theater. So it'll be exciting to revisit that. So probably a special guest, but if things don't work out, Jim, I hope you will enjoy watching those films with me.
Don't lie to me. You want the special guest.
I just said if it doesn't work out, I hope. Jesus. Anyways, be sure to follow us on Twitter at Drive-In Podcast. Check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Revenge of the Drive-In. Check us out on Instagram. Be sure to rate us on whatever podcast platform you listen to us on if you have the ability to. And yeah, we look forward to you joining us next week. And Jim, thanks for joining me.
Patrick, as always, thanks for having me. Listeners, thanks for listening. Take it easy.